I thought it would go over building a textured wall, and I'm going to show you guys how to do a more complex shader. You've been doing pretty simple shaders, and I'm going to build a more complex shader this time. And so we're going to do kind of a textured wall with wallpaper, and it's kind of peeling off. So first thing I did is, like with the last one, I created a rectangle. You can see here it's 10 foot by 22, so it's 10-foot wall, 22 feet long. And then I just converted it to a poly, and I named it a wall. And so this is what we're going to texture. Okay, so let's start off by putting a shader on it, hitting M on the keyboard to bring the material editor up. And just going to pull an Arch and Design shader out here. And let's go ahead and just name this old. And we're going to start with the wallpaper. So this is all old wallpaper. Okay, and we'll just go ahead and apply that. And let's go ahead and turn this down. Let's go for, as a matter of fact, this is going to be a very matte wallpaper. So I'm just going to take the glossiness and reflectivity down, maybe just a hair on each one, because everything has some reflectivity on it. So just a little bit. But what I'm going to do is turn this roughness up, okay? And this is really turning the shader. This shader is what we refer to as a blend. And that's what the basis of an Arch and Design is. And there's another shader algorithm called an Ornayer blend, and that's more for cloth or hair. And that's what this roughness does. When you've got this at 0, then it's a blend, and when it's at 1, it's an Ornayer blend. And of course, you can have a percentage of those two also. Okay, so that'll be our wallpaper. And but I want to show you some other things too. One of the things that you can do is I'm going to tear off this navigator, okay, and I'm going to close this material map browser over here. Okay, now the reason I'm going to close this is once you've used the, this slate shader material editor, you can right click, and everything that's over here on the side is in your right click menu. Okay, and once you get used to using these, you really don't need this over here. So I'm going to get rid of that. And I'm actually going to come over here and I'm going to dock this on this side over here. Okay, so my navigator is going to be docked over here. Now, another thing is I can right click on this and I can click open preview window, and it'll let me float a preview window out here that I can resize, and so I can get bigger previews. What I'm going to do is dock it right above this over here so that I have a pretty big preview of my shader over here, and then I don't need to have this shader so big. Okay, and a navigator over here. So this is the way I normally use my layout here. All of my attributes over here, a preview window over here, and a navigator over here. Now, another thing about this is when you first bring this in, it's going to show this shader. But if you go in right here, you can tell it to show current selection. And that way, when I add different things in here, it'll always switch to whatever I click on. Okay. So the first thing let's go ahead and put us a wallpaper pattern in here. So we're just going to go in here and get a standard bitmap. And I'm going to go into, let's see, let's go into we'll just use Max's standard material library. And we'll go down here and we'll get us, some kind of a little pattern to use. Let's use this one right here. Yeah, this will be good. Okay, let's use this one. So we'll pull this in, and so you'll see that when I click on this, it shows up on here. So no matter what I click on, it's going to update and show it over there. So I don't have to worry about getting these shaders too big to see what's going on, because it'll always update on there, okay? All right, so I'm going to minimize this, and I take it back. We need to do something before I do that. We need to click this button right here, which is show it on our object, okay? So when I go over here, you'll see it's green, but you'll see I won't see the pattern. That's because this doesn't have any mapping coordinates on it. So I'm going to put a mapping coordinate on it. We're just going to use a UVW map. And as soon as I do that, then you'll see it's got a coordinate on it. And you'll see that it's really kind of stretched this piece out, because by default, it'll stretch to the entire piece. So we got alignment down here. We're going to click on bitmap fit. And then I can go down and I can actually get that bitmap. And then it will make it the right proportions. Now, it's not the right size, but it's the right proportions, so there's no stretching. Then I can come in here, and I think I've talked to you about this in the other video, but I can actually come in here and tile this here, but I don't normally do that. I normally want to do it interactively. So what I do is come into my gizmo here, and I scale my gizmo to get the pattern the size that I want. Okay, so I scale it down, and I'm going to go for a pattern, say maybe something, maybe about that size right there. And of course, I can also move this pattern around. It's just sliding on the wall, and I can move it around however I want it to line it up. Now, another thing that I do a lot of times is I'll come in here and rename this. So if you go on this UVW map right here and I rename this, I leave the UVW on there so I know it's a mapping coordinate on my stack. But I'm going to call this wallpaper. So I know that's what this is controlling, is my wallpaper. And then the other thing I'll put in here is I'm going to put its map channel. This is map channel 1. So I'm going to put a 1 in here so that I know this is map channel 1. Now I do this so that, because I'm going to stack several UV coordinates in here, which is one of the things that's nice about Max. It lets you stack UV coordinates. And I know that this is the coordinate that corresponds to the wallpaper, and it's using channel 1. Okay, so I'm kind of giving it information as I go. Okay, so if we do a render in here, then we've got, nice wallpaper in here, okay? No lighting or anything in here right now, so that's fine. Now, one of the things I want to do is I kind of want to age this wallpaper. So what I'm going to do is in my material editor, I'm going to come in, and what I can do is I can come in and I can actually go to Maps, Standard, and I can get a color correction node, okay? Now, this color correction node, if I plug into it, I can actually come in here and, by the way, you double click and the dotted line lets you know where you're at in your shader tree. And I can come in here and I can desaturate this, okay? You can see it's desaturating it, okay? So I can actually process this and desaturate it. Now, what I'm going to actually do is I'm going to create a pattern to merge these two together. So I'm just going to unplug this for a second, and I'm going to go in here and put another pattern on here, and I'm going to use a procedural pattern. So I'm going to go to my standard, and I'm going to pull down, and let's use smoke in here, okay? Now, one of the drawbacks of using procedural textures is if I look in my viewport, it's not really showing you the true size of this pattern, okay? And so I'm going to render it, and you'll see that your pattern is really up kind of big, okay? Now, what I'm going to do is I'm going to do what's called clamping of this, okay? So what I'm going to do is I'm going to come into my material editor, and your smoke doesn't have an output node to it. Some procedural textures, like I'll pull one here, maps, standard, something like, noise. Oops, wrong one. Noise. If I double click on this, it has an output node on it, okay? But not all of these do. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to come in here and I'm actually going to pull out an output node. There's one separate in here. Now I'll show you what this does. I'm just going to run this through here. Double click on this, and I'm going to go into this area down here, okay, and I'm going to enable color map, and this is the gradation for the gradation of the white areas to the black areas, and I want it to be a little more stark. So I'm going to come in here, add points, and I'm going to put 2 points in here, and I'm going to pull this one down. This is the black on this side, and this is the white on this side, and if I get them right on top of each other, then we're going to have a real stark edge. Now, if I pull them both to the left, we get more black, and if I pull them to the left, we get more white. We need more white in here, so I can pull these over, and we're going to get, oops, I pulled it the wrong way, more black, we need more white, so we pull it this way, more white, and the pattern will show up a little bit more. Okay, and so then if I render in here, you'll see now we're getting more of a stark kind of pattern. Okay, so now what I'm going to do is I'm going to use this as a mask. So I'm going to go into my color correction, And I'm going to bring another node out here, and the node I'm going to bring out is a standard node, and it's called composite. This is an awesome node because basically this is layers in Photoshop. So this composite node is just layers, just like in Photoshop. So if I pull this node in and I go into this layer and put it through here, then that's just running this pattern right through here, okay? But if I double click on this and I say, okay, go up here and hit this plus button and I add another layer in here, then I can come in and plug this in, and now these two are going to be layered on top of each other. So in other words, this is the bottom one, okay? Layer 1 is the bottom, and I know this gets confusing a little bit because this is the bottom, and on top, just like Photoshop, they're reversed here. So layer 2 sits on top of layer 1, and right now we'll only see this layer because it's laying on top of it. But if I come in and I put this, it's got a mask node, which is over on this side. So if I put this into this mask node, then what's going to happen is wherever this is black, this one will show through, and wherever it's white, this one will show through, okay? So you can see it here, okay? So the white is letting this one in, the black shows that one. And if we come in here and render, you'll see that's happening now, okay? So I get my splotches in here. And I can deal with scale, how big I want the splotches to be. And I think my scale for what I have right now is about what I want. Now, I don't want these splotches to show up as much as they are, so I'm going to come back to my output. And now I'm going to start pulling this over, which will soften the edge of those. Okay. So we get a softer edge transition, and then I get a subtle staining in here. And this is the thing that a lot of students screw up with when they're doing these kinds of things. They want everything to be interface. We don't really want this interface. We want subtle staining in here. So that's kind of what I want right there, a very subtle staining pattern. So I'm able to use this composite node, and we'll just name this as wallpaper mix. Okay, this is my wallpaper pattern. You really should name your nodes as you're going along because it's a hassle to come back later. And this is wallpaper stain. Okay, and this is my wallpaper. I'll just copy this. I don't know why I keep typing this in. Just copy that. This is my wallpaper mask. Oops. Wallpaper mask. And this is my wallpaper mask, and we refer to these as a clamp. Okay, so everything is named here, and so now we've got our wallpaper on there. Okay, so that's my initial stage of getting a wallpaper in there and using a tileable texture and getting some stain in there. And now the next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to want this to be torn, okay, and showing some of the wall underneath it. And the wall underneath it, I'm going to do this like this is a real old house. And the real old houses, the walls were made of wood. They weren't made of sheetrock, which is what I have nowadays. They were made of wood. So I'm going to put a wood pattern underneath this, and then we're going to come back and rip this up. Okay, so at this stage, we've got the wallpaper. We've layered it up. Got some staining going on in here. And now the next thing I'm going to do is build the wood. Okay, now to do that, what I'm going to do is copy this node, because I've already built this structure and I want a similar structure here. So this one is going to be the old wood. Okay. Now on this shader, and one of the reasons I'm doing this is I'm going to show you how we can actually put two shaders on things, and there's not going to be a multi-sub-object material, which is what you've been taught. I'm going to put these two shaders on there, and that way I can have one set of attributes onto the wallpaper and a different set of attributes to the wood. So on this wood, I'm going to want it to be not be an ordinaire blend, and I'm going to want it to be a little more glossy. I don't know. Let's go for a reflection maybe of 0.3 and maybe glossiness of 0.4. And I'm going to want to turn up the samples. This is the quality of the reflection. And let's turn that up to 32 so we get a quality reflection in here. Okay, so now I need to get a wood pattern. Okay, so we're going to go over to Photoshop. And we're going to open up a wood pattern. Now, I've already gone out and did a search on the internet and found a wood pattern that I liked. And so, let's see, we need to go into, let's see, I set my project file up, week 1, scene assets, images, and here's a wood plank pattern. Okay, so here's a wood plank pattern that I found, and it's, you know, it's really big. If I zoom in on it, it's really big, a lot of quality into it. And we're going to put this on our wall. Okay, so we're going to go back over to here. And so what I'm going to do is right now I'm just going to unplug this structure and just plug directly into this. And then we're going to change this from this pattern to this wood here. Okay. Now, I'm going to use this on a separate mapping channel. Okay, so this wallpaper was set to channel 1, which was that mapping channel we put in here. But now I'm going to do a different mapping coordinate on this. This was going to be on channel 2. Okay, so I'm assigning this to the object. And of course, we're going to have the same thing. We're going here, and you're not going to see it on here because we don't have the right mapping coordinate. We got a coordinate for 1, but we don't have a coordinate for 2. So I'm going to add another mapping coordinate on here, UVW map. And I'm going to rename this one. This is going to be my wood, and I'm going to put it on channel 2. So I'll go down here and click channel 2, and now you'll see the wood in here. Okay, so these channels talk to my shaders and my layers over there, what I want. So now I'm going to do the same thing in here. I'm going to go bitmap fit. I'm going to pick the wood, and now it's going to align it to that. And now I'm going to do the same thing, and I'm going to scale this down so I can get the wood the size that I want it. And I'm going to say, you know, maybe about that size right there. Now, you're seeing one of the typical things you see all the time with problem with materials when you get a bitmap is we want this to be tileable, and it's got lighting information on it. You see where this is darker down here and lighter up there? That's because there's lighting information in our Photoshop file, and so we're going to want to deal with that, okay? So here's how you deal with it. We're going to take this layer, and we're just going to duplicate it so we have another copy of it on top of itself. I'm going to hide that. Then I'm going to go back down to this one. And what we're going to do is go in here and run a filter in Photoshop. So we're going to go to Filter. Let's see. We want to go down to Other, and we want to do High Pass. Now, High Pass is a filter that we can use to take out the lighting information. It also takes out the color, but that's okay. We'll deal with that later. Now, the further you get this to the left, it pretty much just kind of destroys your map. If you get it all the way to the right, then it brings it, but it gets you all your lighting information back in it. So you have to find a kind of a sweet spot in here where we're pulling out the lighting information, but I still get the grain structure that I need, okay? See how this lighting information is going away? That's what I want. So right in there is a nice sweet spot. I'm going to go for that. Now I'm going to turn this layer back on, and I'm going to go down and tell it to color. So all it's doing is adding its color back into this, and now the lighting information is taken out. So I'm going to save this out, and we'll just save this as a Targa file, and we'll just call this old wood. And 24 bits fine. And now I can go back in here and bring up my material editor and then just replace that map with the Targa, higher quality. And now you'll see that pattern's gone. Okay, now you see a little bit of a stain pattern in here because of the color, but I don't really care because I'm going to break all this up anyway. Okay, so now that's looking pretty good. Now I'm going to do the same thing here. I'm going to do the exact same thing. We're going to take it in. We're going to break it up. We're using this same node. Now here's the cool thing about this. I can delete this node now and use this same one in there. Okay, so I'm using this same one twice, which is going to clean up my structure in here. And so now we'll get our wood rendered in here, and you'll see I'm getting some staining on the wood. Okay. Now, we can adjust that however we want, but all I want is some subtle colorations in here shifting, which is fine for right now. Okay. So this is an expedient way because I'm putting these two together. Okay. Using this node twice. That way, if I decide to come in and change this, it changes both of them at the same time using two shaders. Now, how to get two shaders into one? Well, what we're going to do is we're going to come in here and make a new material, standard, and we're going to use a blend node. Now, a blend node allows you to blend between two shaders. Now, by default, it's going to come in and it's going to give me two standard shaders. So we're just going to delete those. All we want is this blend node, and then we can plug these two in here. And now we have a mask that we can actually come in and mask these two shaders together to put on our pattern so that this will go in one place and this will go in a place similar to what I did with this, but I'm going to use a bitmap to do a masking on this. And so now we're starting to get a more complex kind of structure. And what's nice is I can give this shader its own set of attributes, how shiny and everything it is, and this one on the wood, a different set of attributes. And we'll put bump maps and stuff on them. So I'm getting a much more complex shader. Okay, so to create the mask that we're going to want to create on this, I'm going to put a third mapping coordinate on here. So we're going to put a third UVW map on this. And we're going to call this one mask. And we're going to use channel 3. Okay, so I need to change this down here to channel 3, which is not doing anything right now. Okay. Okay, so I'm going to zoom back a little bit. And now what I want to do on this mask for its coordinates, you'll see it snap to it. I want it just a hair bigger than this, just a hair. So I'm just going to click right there. There it is, just a little bit wider. And I need it to be square. So I'm going to double click, copy this width, and I'm going to paste it into here. And now this is square. Now, you'll remember in our other one, we did a similar thing, and we moved the coordinate up there. But in this case, we're going to move the coordinate down here. Okay. So this is similar to a UV unwrap. That's the square in a UV unwrap, but I don't really need to do a UV unwrap. Okay. So what I'm going to do is let's turn off our safe frame. I could render this out. I could bake this out, but I really don't even need to do that because I don't need it baked out. So I showed you how to bake out in the last wall we did, but I don't need to bake this out because all I really need is this coordinate. So I'm just going to hit print screen. So I'm going to hit print screen. I'm going to go over to Photoshop. Let's make a new file. Control N, new, paste. And then I'm going to come in here and I'm going to crop up to it. And I'm actually not using my crop tool. The only reason I'm not using it, I've got it set up to do some other stuff and I don't want to have to reset this up. So I'm just going to use my selection and then just tell it to crop it. Normally I would use a crop tool. So I need to get right on this orange line. It's a pixel off. It's not a big deal. And crop that. Okay. Now what I want to do is I want more resolution than this. So I'm going to come up here and go image size. And I want this to be a 2048. I'm making 2048 textures for my room. So we're going to make this 2048. Okay. And that's fine right there. Okay. It's not perfectly square, but it's okay for what I'm doing. Okay, so let's go canvas size and pixels, and then we'll crop the bottom off of this, 2048, and so it's perfect square. Okay, so now I can build my mask on top of there. There's the wall. Now, to build my mask, what I'm doing is I've gone out and I've gotten some patterns, okay? And I'll show you what I've got here. So I went and got this pattern, okay? Then what I did is I took it and I duplicated it. And then I desaturated it, turned it into black and white. And then I come in and I use my adjustment with my levels, and I'm trying to get some areas completely stark white and some areas completely stark black. Okay, so I'm clamping this down. And so this is what I ended up with. Okay, I ended up inverting it. And I create several patterns this way. Okay, so I first just create several of these. Here's another one. Okay, this one was done from that. Okay, and here's another. I do several of these before I start because I have no idea where I'm going to end up going with these. Okay, another one. This was from that. Now, what I actually did on this one is once I did this, then it's got too much information in it. So what I do is I duplicate this, and I come in here and I blur it. So I go to a Gaussian blur, and I blur it pretty good. Then I come back into this again with my levels, and I have a better time of actually getting some of those little small pieces out of there, and I can get something more like this. This is what I ended up with. Okay, and I've got another one in here. So I did several of these, okay? And so then the next thing I want to do is to start putting these together on my piece. I think I'll start with, say, maybe, I think this one. So I'm going to copy this, select all, edit, copy, merged, and I'm just going to paste this on here. And scale it on. Something like that is fine. And I think I actually want to flip this vertically. So let's go ahead and edit, transform, flip vertically. I want a little more black at the bottom than at the top. And the black is where the wood is going to show, and the white is where the wallpaper is going to show. Okay, let's go over and get another one. Let's get this one. Okay, same thing. Let's get this in here and scale it. About like that. Let it go over the top of it a little bit right there, and I'll put a mask on here, and then I'm just going to paint it out a little bit. I'm using an irregular brush, and so we can kind of soften this edges up just a little bit here so they don't look so stark. Okay, that looks okay. All right, so we're just going to go ahead and merge these two together. Now, some of these little speckles in here, I really don't want. So let's get a little bit closer to these. So I want the big rips and tears, but I don't want these others. And so I'm just going to go ahead and lay a layer on top of that and just paint some of these out. Okay. All right, so I'm going to go ahead and pause the video right here so that you don't have to sit here and watch me massage this. So I'm just going to pause it, and then I'll come back once I get it the way I want. Okay, now I've got this nice and cleaned up, and I paint on layers. That way, it's non-destructive editing. I can always come back, so I'll turn this on and off. So this is what I've cleaned out of this. So a lot of the little specks in the white area I've taken out. Some of the black areas too, like if you look in this black area down here, you'll see that. So I'm kind of taking out just some of the spurious grain and just leaving the tears in here. And so this is a nice way to get a real organic kind of pattern pretty quick and not having just hand paint everything and still get this kind of nice, it's like a controlled chaos kind of look. Okay, so we're going to save this out, and we're going to save it as a target file. And we'll just call this wallpaper mask. And really, save this one as 16-bit. Black and white can be saved as 16. Color, you want 24. 32 is what we need if we need transparency, which normally you don't need that. So we can go 16 with this one. Just keep the file size down. Okay, so now we can come back over here, and we're going to go to our material editor. And now what we're going to do is to come in here, and we're going to bring in a bitmap. So right now I'm just going to take one of these bitmap nodes and hold down the shift key and copy it. I can just copy this node instead of having to make another one. To me, that's a little bit faster. And then I'm going to plug this into my mask node right here. And then I'm going to switch this out with our wallpaper mask. Okay. And then I need to remember that it needs to be on channel 3. Okay. See, if I leave it on channel 2, what will happen is, I don't remember if I signed this. Store view. Then what's going to happen is it's using that number 2, and you get a pattern like this, and this throws students off all the time. I see them do this all the time, like, oh, something's wrong. Oh my gosh. No, you just got the wrong mapping coordinate on here, because since we copied this node, it was using number 2, so we need to make sure it's number 3. That was what our mask was. And now you'll be able to render this, and I'm going to mask the 2 out. Now, one of the things that's happening right here is this is the opposite of what I wanted. So I wanted the wallpaper in this area and the wood in the other areas, okay? So all I have to do is, the way you can kind of think of this is whatever is in the top node here, okay, is what's black here. And what's in the bottom node is what's white. So if I go to this blend node right now, and I just take these 2 shaders and I pull one into the other and I swap them, that'll swap which one is which here, okay? And so now my wallpaper will be in the white area, and my wood is in the small area, the black area. Okay, so now I'm being able to have 2 shaders on this object, and it's not a multi-subject material. It's one upper node that's blending between these 2 shaders, each one with their own attribute, and I'm using a blend node to do that with, and then I'm using a bitmap to mask the 2 together to get this complex shader, okay? All right, now we need to start dealing with some other things, and we're going to deal right now with our bump maps. Okay, let's deal with some bump maps. Okay, so what I can do now is, let's go ahead and see how I want to do this. I want to go ahead and copy. I'm going to need a composite node for this, so I'm just going to copy a composite node. And then we'll just unplug this stuff out of it. And the composite's going to be in my bump for my wood. Okay. I don't really need a composite for a bump on my wallpaper, because that wallpaper, I'm just going to copy this and plug it in. And it came with a actual map that was black and white for the bump of that. Okay. Now, one of the things I do is when I'm messing with the bumps, I don't want to see the pattern on there. Okay. I just want to see the bump. So right now I'm just going to play with this one, and I'm going to assign it. So I've taken this off, and I'm just going to deal with this one. It's simpler to deal with one by itself. If I double click on this, I can go down here, and here's where you turn your bump on and off, okay? But if I go right down here underneath that general maps, this is turning the diffuse off. So it's going to turn that diffuse off, so all I can see is the bump. That way, when I'm doing a render in here, and we'll just do a region render. We don't need to render the whole thing. By the way, what I'm doing, so you may not know you can do this, but you have this menu and stuff down here at the bottom. This hides your menus right here. So I'm popping it back up, and let's just do a region render, say, in this area right here. And then we'll just see our bump in here. And the bump is very subtle in there right now, okay? So I think what I want to do is, let's kick it up here. And I'm going to go pretty high on 2 and see what we got. And there we've got a bump pattern on there. So that bump pattern is fine for my material. And so if I want to, now I can come back on and turn my diffuse back on and render that. And so then that's my pattern with the bump on that little pattern that's on there. Okay. All right. So now we want to do a similar kind of thing down here. But I want to go over and generate my bump in Photoshop of this. Okay, so we're going to go back to Photoshop, and we'll go back to this file. Okay, and so what I'm going to do is just go back to this one and duplicate it. This is my black and white one without the stain on it. And now I'm going to come in here, and I'm going to adjust its levels. White comes forward, black goes back, gray is somewhere in between. So I want a little more starkness. So what's happening is this white area is going to come at me. The gray is going to stay in the middle, and then the black is going to push back. So something about like this. Also, something you need to know about bump maps is we want them blurred just a little bit. We don't want them too sharp. If you get them too sharp, if you're moving the camera, you'll get little dancing ants like when you select something in Photoshop. So we want to blur it a little bit. Okay, so something like this. So we'll save this out as another target file. Now we always want to name this as the whatever we're using it for. So old wood underscore bump. So we know what it goes with, and I'm going to use 24-bit on that. 16 was probably okay. So I'm just going to copy this node. Now, one of the benefits of copying this node now is it's on the right channel. Okay, so we'll just go into here, and then I'm going to change this to the bump. And then we're going to apply this one to it so that we only see the wood bump on here. Oops. And let's render that. And now we're getting, this is, turn off the diffuse. Maybe I didn't. Okay. And I'm going to kick this bump up also. Let's go to 1 on it. And then there's my bump for the wood. Okay, so that looks pretty good. Okay, so now we'll turn its diffuse back on. So both of these are back on. And let's put this back on it. And quick render this region. So now we've got the 2 bumps on there. Now, here's the thing I want to do though. I want this paper to seem like it's coming forward on here. Okay, so we have a bump on the paper, we have a bump on the wood, but I want to bump along this ridge of the edge in here. Okay, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to take my bitmap that's right here, and I'm going to layer it up on top of my wood bump. Okay, so I'm going to put this on top of this, and for right now I just want to look at the bump from this, and so I'm going to assign this to it, turn off the diffuse, and now when I put this on here, it's layering it on just like in Photoshop, and so I'm getting that ridge that I want, but I've overwritten the other. Okay, so what we want to do is to, on this composite, you have blending modes just like you do in Photoshop. Okay, so I'm going to turn this to darken, Okay, and so now it's laying it over the top of it. So we get both of them in here, and we're going to render that. Okay. Now the problem that that's getting me is it's looking like the wallpaper is setting in, and I actually want the wallpaper to look like it's coming forward. Okay, so that's a problem with what I've got right now. So what I really want to do is I'm going to make a copy of this bitmap, okay, to plug in here so that it's separate. And then what I'm going to do is go into its output section, and there's an invert button so that I can invert it. Okay, so now it's going to give me the opposite of what I had. And now what I'm going to do is I'm going to turn my blending mode to, let's say, lighten. Okay, and we can render that. And now what's going to happen is it's going to be coming forward. Okay, so it's going to keep my pattern in here, but it's going to be going forward. So it looks like the paper is sitting on top of the wood. Okay, so now I can come back in, turn my diffuse back on, and let's go apply this blend shader back onto it. And now what we'll have is our wallpaper with a bump in its pattern. I guess I had it backwards. I was thinking it was the other way. Okay, so invert it back. So I don't need to invert it. I had it right to begin with. I thought it was backwards. Okay, so we had it right. Yeah, there we go. Okay, so the wallpaper is coming out and the wood is inset and we got that little rim around it. Okay, so I'm going to pause it here and I'm going to render the whole thing so you can see what it looks like. Okay, there it is rendered. So we've got our nice wallpaper. The wallpaper is stained. The wood is stained. We've got a bump on the wallpaper, a bump on the wood, and then we've got a bump that's around the rim of the paper. So the paper seems like it's sitting on top of the wood. Okay, so it's looking pretty good. Now, you can your trees can get kind of complicated and get kind of all out of place and stuff. What you can do is there's a button right up here, which is layout vertical. If you click that, it'll lay everything out. And then if I click the one to the right of it, layout children. And okay, they look okay. I don't need this node. Delete that. So let's name our blend material. This is old wall. Okay. And this is my wallpaper bump. Wallpaper bump. Okay, this is my old wood. This is old wood. Stain. This is my old wood blend. Okay, this is my wood bump. Old wood bump. And this is my old bump blend. Okay, you just want to keep everything named because you never know when you're going to be sharing your files, and we want to be able to tell what everything is. Okay, I think I want to do another thing to it. Is I want to add a little more stain to this. So when I'm looking at this, it's a little too flat. It's got some subtle in it, but I want to add a little more stain to it. So I'm going to go back over to Photoshop. So let's get where's our template at? There, here it is. Okay, so what I'm going to do is I've gone out and gotten some concrete. As a matter of fact, I think this was that I used in that other piece I've shown you guys, to add some stain on this, okay? But I actually am liking the pattern that's on this one. So I kind of want this pattern, but I want that coloration on it. So let's put the pattern, this on it to color. Okay, so that's what I want right there. Okay, that'll be some nice color on here. And I'm going to save this out. Okay, so I'm just going to save this out as a targa. And this is my old, this is my wallpaper stain. Actually, that's fine. Okay, so back over here on my wallpaper, which is right here, my wallpaper composite. Now I'm going to add another layer on top of that one. Okay, and I'm going to take this, we want the bitmap that is the mask, clone that because that's the right mapping coordinate. So we're going to put that on our another layer on top of here, and then we'll change this to our wallpaper stain. Okay. So now what will happen is it's overriding it, but what I'm going to do is come in here and put this like multiply, and then it'll lay it over the top of it. Okay, so it's going to lay it. So we have blending modes just like in Photoshop. So let's do another region render in here. Let's go back to our region render, and we can see how it's laying on top of it. Now you'll see it's pretty heavy on there, and I really don't want it that heavy. So we have percentages in here, so I can pull this down, how much I want in here. Let's go for something about like that. And see from top to bottom what's going on here. Okay, and so that's adding some stain on top of that. Okay. Now another thing I can do is if I only want to add the stain at the top but not so much at the bottom, okay, I can do that by coming in and adding a mask on that. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to add a mask, and what I'm going to do is get a gradient ramp. Okay. Now, for a second, I'm just going to go ahead and put this gradient ramp in the diffuse for a second so that you guys can see it on here to kind of make sense to you what we're doing. And let's turn it on so we can see it in our viewport. Okay, so there's the gradient showing up in there. Now, see how it's tiling across? That's because by default, when I brought the gradient ramp in, it needs a mapping coordinate, and it defaulted to 1, so it's using this wallpaper mapping coordinate, and we wanted to use 3. So I'm double-clicking on my gradient ramp here, and here's the map channel, so I need this on 3. Okay, so that it's got the correct mapping coordinate on it. And now you'll see that. Now it's running from left to right, and we want to rotate that. So all we have to do is here's your angle. So in your W, we're going to type in 90, and that'll rotate your gradient ramp around. So now it's black at the top, white at the bottom. Okay. And so let's do our little region render and see what we got. Okay, so see it's dark up there and light down here. Now I can adjust that. Okay, I can put extra points on these to adjust that. And so I'm going to double click and make this one white. In fact, and then this one black. there. Just delete that. Right click, delete, forgot. Okay, so then I can adjust these. Back up. So I can control how far down that I want that stain to go. Another cool thing about it is I can actually come in here and it's got a noise function in it too. So we can actually come in here, pick it. System's starting to bog down a little bit. Okay, so I can turn some noise into it. And then it's going to put a noise pattern into it, like this. Okay. All right, so let's now turn that off, put our diffuse back on it, and render and see what we got. Got it inverted, maybe? Just didn't invert that. Yeah, there we go. There we go. And then we're kind of making that stain kind of splotchy. Okay, so let's go back and put our old wall back on it. And let's do one last render. And I'm going to pause it while it renders. Okay, there it is with the stain on it, rendered out. That's looking pretty good. It's really kind of busted that up some. Looks more like it's old and aged. But you'll see the wood now is a little more stark. So I'm going to come back and put that same stain on the wood as well. Okay, so all we have to do is go to our wood composite here, and we add a layer onto that. And then we can take this same bitmap and drop it into a layer on top of the wood and do the same thing. Put it on a multiply, and we're going to turn it down. Let's go for maybe about 50. Okay, and then I'm going to pause it as we render that. Okay, then there's the final render. You'll see the wood is kind of stained now. And so now I've got a really nice looking wall. It's got a lot of character to it. We've really layered up the texture. You can see, let's go ahead and clean our display up here. And very complex shader blend allows us to blend between two shaders so we can have different kinds of attributes to the shaders. We use structures where we're able to use one thing but using it in two different places. We're using these composite nodes, which are really nice because they're like layers in Photoshop. So this is kind of what a shader looks like when I build a shader. You guys are building these little shaders where you're just putting an arch and design, you're putting a bitmap in and maybe a bump. Okay, that's fine, but those are boring, okay? This is what a true shader looks like. When you want to get really nice photographic looking work, you're going to have a complex shader like this. This is what it's going to look like. Okay, so that's going to be the end of this demonstration, and I hope that it's kind of opened you up to see different possibilities of things that you can do. All right, thank you very much.